Yeah, I'm here. It's kind of a shock, not just to you, but to me as well. But I had a really beautiful, like, wonderful comment from someone who watches my videos. Her name is Jane W, and she said on my last video if I was gonna do a best and worst of 2020, and I told her, because she requested it and because like it's so sweet that she's so supportive, that I would do one just for her. I know for like the second half of 2020 I did not film really any videos until kind of the end, so there's some books that you probably haven't even heard me talk about that will be on like my best and my worst of 2020, but today in this video I am bringing you my best of 2020 because I want to start it off on like a positive note, and then we'll bring it down with like my worst. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So I am doing a top 10, and then I think I have like a few honorable mentions that I also want to talk about. Should we go with those first? So let's go with my honorable mentions first. Okay, so my honorable mentions are books that I really enjoyed but just couldn't quite cut the top 10, but also like they were 5 stars. I was obsessed with them and I've talked about them. And the first one I want to talk about is Epoka the Tree of Ekroth, which was created by Kobe Bryant and Ivy Claire. And the sequel just came out and I'm so excited. I haven't gotten my hands on it yet, but this was such a surprise to me. And this is follows 2 main characters, Prisha and Rovi, and they go to this like sports like magic academy, and they compete in all of these kind of Olympic style trials. Prisha is a princess and Rovi is like a renowned thief. And there's like this sacred tree, and there's a bunch of lore and kind of mythology, and like the classes that they take are very interesting. So I really liked the sports like magical setting. Like I thought it was actually really done well, and I wasn't sure how like the sports and the magic was going to blend together in a way that was interesting or in a way that made sense, but I think they did a fantastic job. I highly recommend anyone who has maybe thought about picking up the series or have not like looked into it at all before, but because this was so good, and like right off from the first chapter they kind of leave you wanting more. Prisha, one of the main characters, she does something that you pretty much would think is like unimaginable or like, and it's just kind of like it set the tone for such a great read. So much fun, and I'm excited to get to the sequel. This was a blast. Also, this also has some of the best side characters that I've read in like middle grade. One of my favorite characters is actually a side character. Her name is Vera, and she has an older brother, and she has a very interesting story arc. She's always lived in the shadow of her older brother, and she wants to be the star athlete. Basically, they all want to be star athletes, and it's just so interesting. I love like the world and the magic, and the sports were really cool too, so and like the kind of Greek-ish callbacks. I highly recommend this. So much fun. Go and pick it up. Okay, and then my second honorable mention is the series Waiting for Spring. This is a manga series that I discovered when I was doing the Otaku Readathon, which I helped hosted. And oh my god, I am obsessed. Out of all of the mangas that I've read, to be fair, I haven't kept up with a lot of them. I have never been as addicted as I am to these. So far, every single one has been a 5-star read for me. They are so entertaining. I love all of the characters, and there is a love triangle, but like it's like one of the best love triangles I've ever read, because both options like feel right and you fall kind of for both of them. So it's not like, it really is not like how one's always kind of the underdog, or like you already know like by the setup that they're not going to make it. Like both of these choices are like grade A. And so Waiting for Spring is about a girl who starts at a new school, and she has to step outside her comfort zone, and she wants to make new friends, and she ends up kind of falling in line with these group of like popular boys who are on the basketball team, and because they go to her coffee shop that she works at, and they just kind of hang out there, and so that's how they become friends. It sounds so basic, but it's so good. I love them so much. So if you want like a good manga romance series to pick up, and I'm telling you, it's so good. And not only that, again, sports, that's like a really fun aspect of it too. Every single one has gotten a 5 stars from me. So yes, those are my 2 honorable mentions, and now let's get into my top 10. So I have decided to kind of put these in order, 10 being like, these are all 5 stars, but 10 being like my like lowest of my favorites of the years, and then 1 being like my absolute favorite of the year. Again, these are all 5 stars, so obviously I recommend all of them. Yeah, starting off is Here in the Real World by Sarah Pennypacker. I actually read this, I want to say like January or February of last year, and it still has maintained like its spot on my favorites list. I originally got it as an ARC, and then I bought a finished copy when it came out. This follows our main character, Ware, and he is very much an introvert. He's super shy. He likes to be on his own and kind of in his own imagination. Like, there might be something like a little bit, they don't really say it outright, but like everyone kind of judges him, and his parents like think that there's something a little bit off about him because he just kind of retreats into himself. Something happens and they end up having to send him to like a YMCA, and he doesn't like going there because he doesn't like being a part of the crowd or being with the other kids. And so he notices like next door at this abandoned church that this girl is building this garden, and he decides to like hop the fence and starts talking to her. And there's like this whole mystery of why she's like building this garden, and he is also really obsessed with being like a knight and like chivalry and just kind of like the Middle Ages and that kind of area, like King Arthurian. And so he decides that he wants to make this abandoned church his castle. So they kind of fight over territory because she said she's here first and this is where she's building her garden. And eventually they strike up a friendship, and whereas Ware is very much like in his imagination and loves this fantasy land, the other character, Jolene, is very much a realist and down to earth and very cynical for a child. And so again, it's kind of like their foil of each other. It's really interesting to see their dynamic. There are some, like, obviously it's a kid's book, so the triggers aren't like too terrible, but there are I will say like mentions of child abuse and alcoholism and child neglect. So just in case that those are some things that you have issues with, those are the trigger warnings that I would say for this. But I love this book so much. This was so sweet and so fun and kind of inspiring, and brings a little bit hope back into the world, especially Jolene being such a cynic as she is. Yeah, so I loved this book. I highly recommend it. I keep saying that I want to read Sarah Pennypacker's first. Her debut was Pax, and I know that's gotten like, I think it was up for like a National Book Award. Yeah, so I highly recommend this. This was super cute. Yes. Coming in at number 11 is The Battle of the Labyrinth by Rick Riordan. This is book 4 in the Percy Jackson series. I actually tabbed this. I think I read this for Believe-a-thon, if I'm not mistaken, or like Believe-a-thon 2. And I actually finished the Percy Jackson series this year, so I'm super proud of myself for that. I still need to continue on and read like The Lost Hero, but you know, we'll get there. But this by far was my favorite book out of the entire series. The Labyrinth setting was so cool, and just so many plot twists, especially the end, like what kind of happens with like our main big bads. Ooh, it leaves you going into the 5th book like you need to know what happens. Like I didn't see it coming at all whatsoever. It's so good, and also it's just so much fun. You know, I love Grover, I love Percy. We also get some Percabeth moments in this, which it's been a long time coming. It's so good. I love this series, and as you can tell, like I tabbed it up so much. I had so much fun reading this, and it was just, I think the mix of like overall Percy Jackson's always fun, but really the amount of twists and the things that happen, especially the ending, and again, the whole setting of the Labyrinth was really cool and really elaborate. So I just really enjoyed the atmosphere, the character development. There was just a lot going for this one, and this is definitely, I love The Last Olympian too. Last Olympian made me cry, but yeah, no, Battle of the Labyrinth is that book. Let me know if you've read the Percy Jackson series. Do you have a favorite book in the series, and is it this one? Because I would love to know. Next up on my list is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This was also a blast. I read this. I'm getting so happy and so excited talking about these. I missed booktube. This I read in a single day. I was addicted. I couldn't put it down. This was just like, it's not even, here's the thing, it's not even that it was like an amazing work of art or that everything was like thrilling, although I do think it was. I enjoyed the mystery, but the characters and their relationships, I just ate it up. Like I needed more. I was all consuming. In every chapter I just wanted more, more, more. The characters, I think, are the best part of this book. They are so charming, so lovely, so addicting, and again, there's a love triangle, almost maybe like a love, no, it's definitely a love triangle. But this is basically our main character Avery, she ends up getting an inheritance from this like gazillionaire who she's never met before, and she's hella confused, like, why the hell am I getting like this inheritance money? And so she goes to the will hearing. Yeah, so he's left her his entire estate and has kind of screwed out all of his grandkids out of like their inheritance. And the grandfather was like super into like puzzles and riddles, and he has this mansion with all these secret rooms and like secret passages, and like they think that there is a riddle in the will or something. There has to be a reason on why he chose Avery, whom he claims to have never met before, and she doesn't recall him at all. She's never met any of these family. So they're trying to figure out and unravel this mystery of like why her, how is she somewhat connected to the grandfather's death or the family. So there is a love triangle between her and two of the grandsons, and all of the grandsons are just great. Love them, A+. Especially my favorite is the youngest one, and all of the, like, by the way, all the grandkids, like they have the same mom but they have different dads, because, you know, go queen. I don't even like Gossip Girl, but like if you love rich people drama and like mysteries, or like Pretty Little Liars, like, but without the weird pedophilia thing, then this is what I would recommend. I loved it. I literally like threw the book once I finished it because it left off on like the biggest cliffhanger. And I'm really upset that Jennifer did not release them all at the same time, because I desperately need the next book in the series. But yeah, so I had such a fun time reading this. What more could you want? Rich people drama, mystery, cool house, great characters. It was just a fun time, and I am down to reread this anytime. When I need something to basically like pull me out of a slump, this will probably be my go-to. The next book on my list, you might be surprised that I'm putting it at number 4 and that why it's not higher, but because when I read this, I would not shut up about it. I kind of like forced like a lot of my friends to read it, which, to be fair, I've done that with like my favorite book of the year, and I remember touting that like, oh my god, like this is gonna be my favorite book of 2020, I already know. But lo and behold, I read some other books last year. Number 4 on my list is Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. I think I love this book. I really do. And I think it came to me at a time when I really needed it. This is about our main character, Amma, and she wakes up and she doesn't recall anything of her life. All that she knows is that she's traveling with this prince named Emery, and he said that he saved her from this dragon in this castle, and basically now that he saved her, she has to marry him, and like she doesn't really get a say. He won't tell her anything about her life or how she ended up in the castle. It's really, there's a lot of trigger warnings in this as well. I will say rape, sexual assault, animal cruelty. Those are like the ones that are coming to my mind right now. Well, sexual abuse. Yeah, it's kind of a dark, and Elena K. Arnold is kind of known for doing, I guess, like dark, twisted, fairy tale-ish kind of things, and turning like traditional fairy tales on their head. This was kind of gruesome, at times difficult to read, at least for me, but I also enjoyed it. And the thing is like you can already kind of, like, it's not hard to guess the twist, but I think there is a sense of dramatic irony, whereas in we know something that the character doesn't know, and we're just waiting for Amma to figure it out herself. There's also, I really enjoyed the writing with this. I thought it was, at least to me, I know some people, some of the critiques that I've heard from my friends is that it's a little bit heavy-handed with like the writing and the symbolism, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I love the cover because now knowing everything, like it just is stunning. And it's not something, it's a very much like, there's not heavy plot, or there's not like a big adventure. It's mostly like her emotional journey in discovering the truth about her past, and how this society and this kingdom that she's been forced to and like kidnapped into basically is working. It's just heartbreaking to me, but it also made me feel very powerful, especially when I reached the end. I really enjoyed it, and it's just it was so satisfying to me. And again, it's not something that's like super explosive or even that takes like a bunch of pages. The Daenerys Targaryen in me just was obsessed. Yes, this is number 4. I still like talking about it. I know how much I love it, and I know how much I was telling everyone that this was like the greatest book, and it's so good. It's just, I would definitely look into first of all the trigger warnings of this, because it's the biggest thing, is there's a lot. I really enjoyed the writing. I will probably read anything else Elena K. Arnold rights just because I loved this so much. Now we are at number 5, and number 5 I have If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is actually her debut novel, and this again is nothing too like dramatic or special. I mean, there's definitely dramatic crap that happens on in here. There's no like super big alarming plot. It's basically just a slice of life of 4 different girls, follows their perspectives and basically what it's like to live their lives in Seoul, South Korea. One of the girls, my favorite character, she is like a waitress, and she works as like a room salon girl where she like serves like wealthy businessmen. One of them is obsessed with K-pop, and then another one, like her roommate, is like undergoing like crazy incredible plastic surgery, and it all just discusses like the societal pressure of beauty on women. Like it just, like that's the main thing, is just the toxic kind of like culture of beauty and how much like it costs them, and it just follows. It's kind of like it's sad too. You'll find that a lot of my favorite books are like sad. Yeah, one of them is like a talented artist, so it just follows them and their relationships, not only with one another but like their significant others. I had the arc of this and I tabbed it and I gave it to my friend Haley because I wanted her to read it, and then I bought the finished copy for myself. I really want to go through and reread this again and tab it again because there was just so many parts that were amazing. And I remember, I think I read this for the Asian readathon, and so in my vlogs I talk about it more, but I think I originally rated this a 4 stars, but as I like kept thinking about it, it wouldn't leave my mind, and I eventually rated it at 5 stars. And I just think, especially for a debut, this was like honestly spectacular in my opinion. And take that with a grain of salt because like who am I? Like I don't want to like oversell it because it's just interesting and it's sad and it's heartbreaking, and like I think any girl can relate to like not only just like unrealistic beauty standards, but just to see that the lengths that like these women go through, at least in this society, when that's what they're praised on like above all else. I don't know, I just really enjoyed it and I highly recommend it, and I put it at number 5 because I enjoyed it so much. Okay, we've now cracked the top 5, and so these are my top 5 favorite books of 2020. Okay, so starting the top 5 is kind of disappointing because I'm reading the sequel right now and I'm not loving it, which is disappointing because I am obsessed with the first book, and I just wish that energy was left into the second book. But anyways, it is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. This was the, I think, the Fairy Loot edition, or Owl Crate, I forget which one, and it's signed by Renee, and it's got these awesome sprayed edges. It doesn't really match the regular copy, which is what I have of The Damned, because it's much bigger. But this is a vampire story, and let me tell you, I love a good vampire story. Also, oh, it must be Fairy Loot because it has the artwork on the back. Beautiful. But basically this follows our main character, Celine Rousseau, and she leaves France after like something kind of tragic happens and she's kind of running away from her past, and so she goes to live in a convent in New Orleans until she can find a suitable match and she can move, and obviously that's the role that women play, is to become a wife and blah blah blah. She gets caught up with this woman Odette, who it's like selling her handkerchiefs. They have to basically make money on the side like while they're trying to find their match, and she used to work for a seamstress, so Odette is impressed with like her like embroidery and her like ability to sew, so she invites her back to this restaurant, and from there Celine kind of gets caught up with the Court of Lions. One of the Court of Lions, his name is Bastion, and that's the main love romance, and all you need to know is basically a vampire murder mystery, and people around Celine keep dying, and so she's wondering why and who's behind it all. So it's basically a vampire murder mystery, and a lot of people say that like they don't say the word vampire, but you know that they're vampires. Like people are being like, literally someone dies I think within like the first 15 pages, and like they said their bodies are drained of blood, so what do you think it is? Like, so I really enjoyed the writing of this. I enjoyed the romance. It was a good like hate to love. Ooh, also there's like a detective character in here who's really interesting. I loved the twist at the end. I did not see it coming. Like I said, if you like murder mysteries, if you like vampires, if you like a historical New Orleans setting, all of this just had everything amazing going for it, and I liked the characters. And and this was just such a fun read. I would just kind of treat this maybe as a standalone because The Damned, I'm buddy reading it right now with Ginger. We're both kind of a little disappointed. I'll probably talk about that in my wrap up for January. Nevertheless, if I kind of want to treat this as a standalone, I could, and it's so good and it's addicting, and I love Renee Audier's writing, as you'll see, because spoiler alert, she's got a second book on this list. So yes, number 6 I mean, is The Beautiful by Renee Audier. Okay, and following Miss Renee Audier is also Miss Renee Audier, and this is The Wrath in the Dawn by Renee Audier. How many times can I say that? So this was actually wonderfully introduced to me by Ginger from Spice Reads Books. I'm certain by now you've heard me talk about her. I won't shut up about her. She's great. Go follow her channel. But we did a video kind of where we swapped each other's favorites, and so she read 5 of my favorites, I read 5 of hers, and this was genius. This was everything that I wanted. This is probably the best romance that I have read. Like, beating the Inheritance Games, like, that was just fun. If we're talking like romance, ooh, this is steamy. We want to talk hate to love. Oh my god, so addicting. Oh, let me reel it back a little bit. Okay, so this is kind of like a vague retelling of 1001 Nights and like Scheherazade, and you can definitely tell that in the beginning, but it kind of strays away from that. But basically there is this caliph, and his name is Khalid. He keeps taking all these wives, and at the dawn of every morning he like kills them. Scheherazade, I think this is how you pronounce her name in this. It's spelled a little bit differently, but that's how I was pronouncing it. She volunteers to be one of his wives, and she ends up telling him like a story before the evening is over. She tells him a story and she leaves it off as a cliffhanger, and so therefore he wants to spare her until the next day so he can hear the rest of the story. She does this several times, and then it kind of leads more onto there, but there's this whole mystery of why he is like killing all of these women, and ultimately Scheherazade wants revenge. She plans on murdering the king, and because one of her friends was murdered by him. It's so good. It's so good. Renee Audier's writing is like so poetic and beautiful, and she knows how to make romances so well. Like, she knows how to create just the best like tension, and I don't know anyone else who can really match her with that, except for maybe like some of the things that Leigh Bardugo has done. But honestly, when it comes to also just the setting of this was so beautiful. Just the way that things were described, it was so atmospheric. I could picture what the characters were like. Also has some really good lovable side characters as well. But I needed to pick up the second one immediately because this was so good. I actually think I have the second one in hardcover. There's also some interesting magic that's going on in here too, so this is kind of like, I would definitely recommend this series. I am obsessed. So thank you so much, Ginger, for allowing me to read this, because it is, what are we on, number 8 now? Do we only have 2 more to go? No, we have 3 more to go. So it's number 4 on my list. Yes. So thank you. I owe you so much, Ginger. Love you. Okie doke. And coming in at number 3, you're just gonna hear me gush about my favorite books now again, is, okay, we have Leilani of the Distant Sea by Erin and Trona Kelly. This, I believe I read for, I don't know if it was Believe-a-thon or Asian Readathon, because I believe Erin Trona Kelly is also Filipino. This I would best describe as, if you enjoy Moana but like want something a little bit more deeper and meaningful than Moana, because I didn't even really like Moana, but like the setting is very similar, obviously. Leilani is such a great character. She reminds me a lot of myself. She has such a big heart and she's so empathetic, and she ends up messing up the town because there's this mountain. They want to please this god, and anything that happens like to the island, they believe that they've displeased the gods, and Leilani kind of does something that messes up the island, and so she takes it upon herself to try and fix it. But this not only follows Leilani's perspective, but it also follows the perspective of a couple of different characters, and also like creatures that she encounters. Like, you kind of get their own backstory. There's also some like stunning and beautiful illustrations in here. I also just really want to reread this again. This, I think, was beautiful because of its lyrical writing. The characters themselves are just, they will inevitably make you fall in love with them. Here's a little map. And it's just like a really cool adventure, especially because like Leilani herself, she's maybe not what you would expect to be a hero. And she kind of definitely stumbles and fumbles, but she'll always try her hardest, and she's brave in her own way. Love her friendship with her best friend and her relationship with her mother. It kind of tackles a lot of different issues, from like bullying to standing up for yourself and what you believe is right, and also like just finding inner strength within yourself. So it was a very sweet and inspiring story, and I highly recommend this to pretty much anyone, but I love recommending this to kids if they're looking for something. It also has like some great kind of like myth that I'm sure she's pulled from, and like there is like this spirit that they believe like drowned, like the spirit of this girl who is drowned. I feel like I'm not explaining it so well because like it's been a while since I've read it. I think I read this back in March or April, and I definitely want to reread it. And I remember at the time too saying when I had read it that it was so close to being in my top 5, or like my top favorite of the year. I mean, sorry. Like I remember considering like, is this my favorite book of the year? But I hadn't read the other two that I'm about to mention. Yeah, I think I read it. I might have read it for Believeathon. Either one. But so if you want to see like my initial reactions to that, I will probably link it up above in like a card. But it is so good. It's so beautiful, and it's so heartwarming, and it's just inspiring and lovely, and I think everyone should read it. Okay, and then I don't know if you might be able to guess my top favorite. If you've been watching my videos, you probably could guess my top favorite if you saw my reaction to it, because like I was a mess afterwards. But I think this book, I didn't really get a chance to talk about much. I think I talked about it in a couple of videos that I was reading it. But this is my number 2 favorite book of the year, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is like a deliciously slow burn, sad, beautiful story of our main character, Addie LaRue. How it's described, have this Faustinian like deal where she sells her soul to this spirit of the night, kind of on accident, but she makes a bargain in which she can live forever. But the only caveat to this is that everyone that she comes in contact with will forget her immediately afterwards. So like once she's out of their sight, it's as if they've never met her before. So she can't make any lasting connections. She can no longer go back to her family because they don't remember her. And everyone that she's ever fallen in love with pretty much forgets her, and she can only have like a one-day romance. She has kind of touched the lives of like a bunch of different people and like knows them and follows them, and it's just so tender and so heartbreaking. I remember Allie from Allie with Books on Twitter, she said if you've listened to Cardigan by Taylor Swift, like that melancholy vibe fits this book so well, and everything about like the lyrics and everything is like the way, like how well it relates is actually incredible. So Allie, thank you, because now every time I listen to that song I also think of this book. And also this like creature keeps coming to her every so often because he wants to see if basically she's given up to the point where she's ready to like die and be forgotten. But they kind of have like this interesting like rivalry going on with each other, and she's determined to kind of pull through and like find it. Is very philosophical, and it talks about like what brings meaning to life, like how important like connections are, and if you can be really satisfied if you're alone. It's so good, you guys. And like I know so many people have probably been putting this on their top 10 lists, but honestly it deserves to be there. It is stunning. Victoria Schwab does such a wonderful job of writing this beautiful story, these characters, and it'll break your heart. And there's like an interesting there's also some interesting twists too, because like even apart from that, there were some moments that I honestly did not see coming, and it kind of turned the story on its head, and so I really enjoyed that. One of the best endings I have ever read. Will never forget this book. Kind of changed my life a little bit. Yeah, if you haven't read it, there's a reason everyone's talking about it. It's because it's incredible. Okay, and now we've come to my final favorite of 2020. I have forced like 2 of my friends to read this. I also put it on my list for Ginger to read. She didn't pick it, but maybe if we do this experiment again, she'll read it. Putting that out there, Ginger, if you're watching this video. And I think everyone should read it, and everyone will cry most likely because it's really sad, but it's also really amazing, and that is When You Trap a Tiger by Tay Keller. This I read for Koreadathon, which was a readathon that was hosted by Books with Chloe and Monica Kim. Basically focused on reading Korean stories, and so this follows our main character Lily. She is half Korean, and she and her sister and her mom go to visit their grandmother and live with her for a while. Lily keeps seeing this tiger, and she's kind of freaked out a little bit by it, but she recalls like an old kind of like folk tale that her grandmother used to tell her about like mythical tigers. Her grandmother tells her story that like yeah, tigers used to be after her because she stole something from them, and now Lily finds out that yes, that her grandmother did steal from them, and now that the tiger wants it back. She's trying to kind of trap the obviously she's trying to trap the tiger to kind of figure out what, first of all, what she'd stolen from them, and just kind of unravel the mystery of like her grandmother's past. But like, this isn't really a fantasy story. This is definitely more fabulism and like surrealism. It's definitely set in our modern world, but just with like a little sprinkle of like fantasy and myth in it. It's not heavy on it. Again, this is kind of like a slice of life. It's not like a big adventure, and I think I really appreciate those kinds of stories. I love things that center around family, and this in particular kind of focuses on intergenerational trauma between the grandmother and like the parent, like her mom, and then now the kids. It's just a beautiful story. Also, there is such a good like dynamic of sisterhood in this, and so I have 2 older sisters and I could definitely relate, and I think that's one of the best things about this book is not only the characters but the relationships, the friendships that Lily ends up making. It's just so fun, and it's sad and heartbreaking because the grandmother, the reason why they've gone to like visit the grandmother is because she's fallen ill. It's just, it's so good. It's so sad. Also, I don't even know if I want to like spoil it, but like, it's not really a spoiler, but like, I was excited when it happened, and I know my roommate was excited when it happened because I didn't tell her. But there's also like a really sweet like female romance in this, and it's just really charming and relatable and heartbreaking. I've forced my roommate and my friend Haley to read it. I forced my friend Sarah to read it, and she told me that she was crying. She also read it, and like Haley read it in a day. I think Sarah read it in like 2 or 3 days. So it's really not that long of a read. There's just so many enjoyable moments for it, and again, Tay Keller is probably like, I haven't read anything else by them, but I've picked up The Art of Unbreakable Things, The Art of Breakable Things by the same author, and I know she has a new book coming out this year. So I am highly anticipating reading both of those because the writing was so beautiful, so lyrical. I know even Haley like tabbed some points where she wanted to remember certain lines because it's just so stunning. And like this, I like when I looked at this and when I picked it up, I really didn't think it was going to be anything special, but boy, does this hold something special inside. And if I could beg anyone to read a book this year, like if I could choose what book like everyone read, it would be this book. Like, that's how much I love it, and I will not shut up about it until everyone reads it. It's a beautiful middle grade. I think not only is it a book for kids, but like there is something for everyone in this book, and I think it's very relatable to like a bunch of people. I've also sold so many copies of this at work because I just love it that much. And I really think in my entire whole heart and being that anyone could find something to enjoy about this, no matter what your age range is. Yes, it's a middle grade, but like, I think anyone would enjoy this. Yes, I enjoyed this so much. Please pick it up and read it because it is my favorite book of the year, and I can't stop talking about it enough, and I will not stop talking about it until everyone reads it. Do yourself a favor. And yeah, that is my top 10 and 2 honorable mentions of 2020. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you even heard any of these books, because I know I kind of have some obscure ones on here, and what you thought of them. And also let me know like what your favorite book of the year was, because I would love to know, because I am always looking for recommendations. So yeah, if you can tell me your favorite book, that would be great, because I need to read some 5 stars. I've already started off the year and nothing has been wowing me so far, so I could definitely use some awesome recommendations. But anyways, that is all I have for you guys in this video. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.